Hello. I'm going to do a brief little overview of this cool new device category. Well, it's new to me at least, that I discovered and started using. These are e-ink tablets. This is the Remarkable 2. The Remarkable has been pretty heavy advertiser on Instagram and stuff for a while, and so I've seen it around a lot. And I wanted to explore this category for a couple of reasons. Number one, I just love e-ink. I've always loved e-ink screens. I love that they look so, analog and paper-like. And I'm not really a paper and pen or pencil person in the rest of my life in almost any context, but these just seem so cool and novel to me because they're computing devices, but they're so different from lit screens that we have on everything else. I've always loved e-readers, but I don't actually read that much. I've always loved the idea of notebooks and pens, but I don't really handwrite stuff that much. But I decided to give this a shot because what I found is that there's all these different use cases that I made, and forgive the roughness of this video. I don't have time to make a fancier one, so I'm going to do this kind of rough one-shot thing and hope it works out. So I've had all these like use cases I've considered for like what are these things, what are these different devices good for? I have the iPad with the Apple Pencil, e-readers like the Kindle or the Kobo, and e-ink tablets, which is what this category. I've also heard them called e-notes or e-notebooks, but basically e-ink tablets is what I'm going to call them. And all these different apps or applications of needs that you could do. So like if you're reading books, for instance, like I think the e-reader is by far the best for that because it's smaller than these. E-readers are way smaller than these. These are kind of just too big and too heavy to be really good at reading books. So e-readers really win that. If you're reading PDFs, that's going to be a little bit bigger. That's going to be possibly better on the iPad or one of these. For long form reading, I still would greatly prefer, an e-ink device. So I'm going to put PDFs kind of over here, like between these two devices. These can both do it. It depends on really how big they are. I would give an edge to the e-ink tablets because they're much bigger. So maybe I'd put this over here. Um, if you're reading news and articles and stuff, that I think is better on the iPad because that's going to be more like app dependent. You're not going to be, the app situation on these tablets is all pretty rough. Some of them run full blown Android. This does not. This is the Remarkable. This runs Linux, it's kind of its own custom OS. Really, if you're going to be reading news, you're gonna want like a web browser, full color, full interaction. You're going to want to use the news companies' apps themselves in a lot of cases. So iPad and phones win for that. Productivity apps, things like Obsidian, Bear, Apple Notes. You're going to probably want the iPad for that as well. These devices have some things like that, but they're not very good and they're pretty limited. So you're going to want that as well. Now, if you are taking notes in or on books, these really win for that. Now, there are some e-readers that have this functionality. The Kindle Scribe comes to mind, the Kobo Ellipsa 2e. Taking notes in and on books, that's going to be more this category, so between these two. If you're marking up PDFs, kind of the same kind of thing, but with a little more edge towards the e-ink tablets. They tend to have better features than e-readers do. Taking notes in person. This is something I've found that I don't like computers for. I don't like having a laptop and typing notes when somebody's talking to me. I don't love that. Now, if you're doing it like in a one-on-one meeting, that's going to be a different scenario than if you're like a student taking notes in a class. I think for taking notes in class, you're probably going to want a computer or an iPad just for more features like, recording what the speaker is saying and being able to sync it up. There's all these different apps that do that. So maybe the iPad might be better for that, but these e-ink tablets are also very good for that. So I'm going to put this right in the middle between those two. Journaling, I think the iPad probably wins there because there's wonderful apps like Day One that are really, really good, and you can integrate like your photos and other stuff that you do that, multimedia integrations that you won't necessarily have on one of these. If you're doing long form writing, I think that's kind of between these two as well. I think I would prefer a computer, honestly, but if you're into more handwriting stuff, I think the iPad would have a lot of advantages in a lot of the apps and things that would be available there for organization, editing. But these can be good for distraction-free writing, so this is also kind of in the middle here. If you're doing like knowledge-based kind of work, like trying to keep a set of documentation or reference material notes, I like Apple Notes for that, or something like Bear, Obsidian, or all those different tools. So I'm going to say the iPad's better for that too. Drawing and illustration, I don't really do this, but if you're doing artistic drawing or detailed drawings, I think the iPad's going to win there too, because you have, the full color support, the pencil, you have all the different apps like Procreate that are like really optimized for that. So I think the iPad's going to win there too. So I'm going to put this over here. But then there's this other one. There's a whiteboard. If you want to actually have like a whiteboard type surface, I think these devices are far better than everything else at that category. And I'll tell you why. So first of all, this thing can be sitting on your desk next to you as you work all day long. That's the e-ink screen refresh there. This can be sitting next to you all day long, and this has the battery life to do it. You can have this open on this screen for probably 2 or 3 days before the battery would need to be recharged. It's really optimized for low power use. So all day long, if you want something to quickly jot something down or have a to-do list or any kind of like quick, if somebody calls you on the phone, you want to quickly jot something down when you have one hand on the phone, this is great for that, and it destroys everything else in terms of how good it is for that. And this is where I have found this to be useful in my life. Again, I never really got into like notebooks and stuff because, it'd be great. I'd write something down and like, I'd have some to-do list. And then, the second I wanted to change something, you can't do this and you can't undo and you can't have layers on a notebook. You just can't do it. That's not what paper is good for or possible to do. So I found I love these devices for having something next to my desk, because what I found is that if I have like a to-do list, stuff I want to do today, if I keep it in Apple Notes, I'm just never going to look at it. But if I have this here all day, what I've been doing, I have basically like 3 pages I swipe between. I have my personal to-do list here, stuff I got to do in my life, Then over here, I have my restaurant to-do list for different tasks I have for the restaurant organized in different ways. And next to that, I have my Overcast to-do list. And the next to that is just a scratch pad. And so I swipe between these 3 main things, and and most of the time I'm only working on one at a time. So as I'm working on the restaurant stuff, I'll have this up, and I'll just have this, as I work, and I'll be able to cross stuff off. Or like the other day, I took a couple days in a row to do all Overcast work. So I had this screen up, and I have my different things of what I want to do. And I find these work really well with like 1 page of notes. I mean, as you can see, like the navigation between pages is not as fast as it would be on an iPad or a computer. Wow, it's slow. So what's going on? There we go. So what I found is that these devices are not great for like heavy navigation, but they are great to like be on your desk, off to the side, and be your kind of whiteboard or your notebook companion to your computer work or your real life work. And so I started out with the Remarkable 2, and then I started hearing about the Supernote. And that's when this device came into my life. This is the Supernote Manta. This device is kind of like the nerd high-end version of the Remarkable. Now, the main differences I'll get to in a few minutes, but what attracted me to the Supernote is, first of all, technically it has a way better screen. This Remarkable 2 here, this is a 5-year-old device. The Supernote is only a few months old, and it shows. The screen tech. It's a whole new generation of screen. I should note also, the Remarkable 2. There's now a Remarkable Paper Pro. There's a color larger version of this with a front light. I chose not to get that one because I think the size of this one is better for my needs, and it's a little bit simpler in certain ways. So I chose to get the Remarkable 2 instead of the brand new or newish Remarkable Paper Pro. But so some of these things the Remarkable Paper Pro improves upon, but not most of them. So what I like about the Supernote is, first of all, the pen tips are these hard ceramic nibs. These are permanent and never wear out. Supernote nibs are a lot like Apple pencils. They have kind of a soft, plasticky tip, and so over time, that tip will develop like flat spots or get dented or whatever, or wear out and need to be replaced. So the writing experience is not always the same as that tip wears in. But on the Supernote, these tips are ceramic, they're permanent, they're always the same. And on the screen, it has a soft film. So the Remarkable has like a hard screen, soft tip. This is soft screen, hard tip. And so you end up, it feels more like soft paper. It writes a lot smoother and nicer. And it's just generally like a nicer writing experience for most people's preferences. And the Supernote has a huge range of possible pens. So this right here is the Heart of Metal pen. This is their push-up pen. I tried this too. It's like a simple click pen. This is actually a real like Pilot G2 pen that an Etsy seller has modified to have Supernote guts. So you can just use the Pilot G2 like clicky pen on your Supernote, which is a fun thing to do. There's all sorts of pens. If you're a pen nerd, this is really designed for you. I'm not, and so it doesn't really matter that much to me. What is very noticeable though about the Supernote arrangement is that this pen loop on the side makes it much nicer in bags, because this doesn't really pop off, whereas on the Remarkable, this is just magnetically attached like an Apple Pencil, and so any hit to it comes right off. So that's a little bit less convenient in a bag. I do find, though, the Remarkable I like better on a desk, because you can just quickly pop this off, write something, when you're done, just kind of toss it back there and it sticks. Whereas, you know, on the Remarkable or on the Supernote, you got to take it out of the loop, do it, and then stick it back in the loop. It's just like a little bit more, you know, a friction experience. But the other thing that got me about the Supernote is what you see here. These are links. The Supernote has all sorts of cool functions. Like if you make a header, if you decide this is going to be like a section of your document, you can draw a lasso around this and say that's a header. Let's style that like a header. Then you go to your navigation up here, and all of your headers will appear in your own handwriting, exactly whatever you've highlighted, and you can quickly tap one to navigate. You can say they have keywords, stars, they have all these different organizational features. I personally love links, because you can link out to different documents or different pages within the document and bounce back and forth, and it's really, really nice to be able to have that quick navigation. You can jump right between things, so you can jump, you know, instead of having, you know, in my Remarkable situation, I just have kind of 3 pages of the same note. With the Supernote, I can have 3 entirely different notebooks that I'm bouncing between, so it's easier to have like multi-page stuff. Supernote also has these wonderful gestures. So, you know, you have your drawing, you can hold down 2 fingers on this gesture zone on the left here to erase it. It's a lasso eraser. Or you can hold down 2 fingers here and make a lasso there and link or whatever else, or move stuff around. So those are really nice. There's an undo gesture, swipe up there. You swipe down on this side to get the main navigation screen here, or you swipe up to do an e-ink refresh manually. It's a really kind of nerdy system with a lot of controls. I find the problem is the gestures are a little unreliable for me. So, of course, now, see, it missed a little bit there. See, now it's working perfectly. Normally, see, now it just missed that lasso. Like what I find, my error rate on the gestures is really, really high. It missed that lasso too, missed that one. How about this one? No, I mean, is it gonna get, there we go, now it got one. Okay, now let me erase all of those. So I like the gesture functionality, like, you know, in theory, but in practice, it's super unreliable for me. So that was a constant state of friction for me as I'm using the Supernote. But overall, like, I love the organizational features and the higher resolution screen so much that I thought, I think I'm going to return the Remarkable 2 while I still can. I'm right at the end of the window here. And then I decided, let me go back to the Remarkable 2. Oh, one more thing I like about this, by the way. This cover, awesome. Half fold cover, just like the old iPad 2 cover, but it latches in instead of being magnetic. So this is the complete setup. This goes in a bag just like this. So it's way smaller and lighter as a complete setup compared to a Remarkable with like a wraparound style folio case, which I haven't yet found one that I like. I have a couple of different options, but they all suck. Anyway, so I love that, like the physical part of the Supernote to be brought with you is way, way better. So overall, love, love, love certain things about the Supernote. Finer pen, softer feel, much nicer screen. The lighter, it's much better in bags with the pen loop thing, attaching the pen on. Love those gesture shortcuts, although they are very slow and very unreliable. Love the links in the navigation. Love, they actually have a Kindle app that you can have on your sidebar here. I don't need that, but you might, so that's a great feature. Tons of controls, tons of customizability, very much an Android-like design, and in fact, it does run Android. Very much like Android, like we're going to give you everything under the sun that you can customize. That's the Supernote. So that I really do enjoy. But then when I went to clear off my data off the Remarkable, I started playing with it and I realized, oh, this is actually like really, really fast. Like you can see, like moving between tools. Like that's how fast moving between tools is in the Remarkable. And on the Supernote, everything's a little bit laggy. It's like a little bit unreliable, a little slow. And so there's the friction of just having less responsiveness I found on the Remarkable. It's just, even though I don't have those gestures, it's so fast and easy to move stuff around. Like, this is a level of responsiveness that you just don't have on the Supernote. Everything on the Remarkable is just so much faster. So what I ended up loving about the Remarkable, and why I think I'm going to stick with it instead, is all that speed and everything is actually better for my uses, because I don't have a ton of notes. I don't need huge organization. I really just need a couple of pages. So the Remarkable 2, much faster, much more responsive. The sync story is also very different. The Supernote, you can sync to a bunch of different things or its own service. They're all free, but you kind of have to sync it manually. You have to like pull down this menu and like tell it to sync. I couldn't get it to sync in the background pretty much ever, whereas the Remarkable just syncs in the background. It just handles it. It's totally fine. But you do have to pay for their sync service. It's a few bucks a month. Remarkable 2, I also find it much better on a desk compared to the Supernote because of mostly the pen situation. You know, that's much better. Also, way better battery life on the Remarkable. If you have it out on a desk displaying stuff all day, the Remarkable has much better battery life than the Supernote. Remarkable also has a bunch of keyboard features. They have like a keyboard you can add on. They have all these text features. You can use their companion app to like type text onto your notes or to see your notes from your iPhone. Supernote has the companion app, but it can only view notes. And also, as mentioned, the sync is pretty rough on the Supernote. So chances are whatever you want to access from your phone is not synced. Whereas on the Remarkable, if you're away from your Remarkable, you open up the app on your phone and you can get to your stuff. It's right there and it's always up to date. So the Remarkable, great on a desk, great sync situation that you do pay for it. Keyboard features, I don't really use them, but you might. I also came to love the simpler toolbar on the Remarkable. You know, compared to the Supernote, it's just so many fewer items and they're larger touch targets. So I find it much faster and more reliable. I also love that you can see the strip here makes a wide margin to hold on to here. And I like that a lot compared to the thin margin here. I find it a little more error prone when hand holding it. Finally, the Remarkable has automatic shape recognition, just like Procreate. So if you draw a shape and hold down at the end, it'll correct it into like a perfect version of that shape for you. Lines as well. I've found that to be very, very useful when writing. Now on the Supernote, you can do that, but it only works on lines. It does not work for other shapes. And even lines, I found it to be a little unreliable. Maybe I'm just not making straight enough lines, but it does. Come on. I had it. Anyway, it does work on the Supernote. I just maybe am failing at it right now. And also on the Remarkable, you can zoom and you can write really tiny text, which is helpful sometimes when you're making, when I'm making like my headers and my templates, I want to have like, smaller text. There's also, you can scroll up and down on the Remarkable. So it's overall like the Remarkable experience, it is more limited in terms of options, controls. You do pay for the sync service. So I can see why the Supernote appeals to people who want way more options. They want way more customizability. They want those organizational features. But for my personal use, the Remarkable is actually a better setup and a better device overall because it is just so much more responsive in casual use, like what I'm doing here. Way, way, way more responsive. And I love a lot of those features that I think are actually better on the Remarkable than on the Supernote. So ultimately, I'm actually going to keep the Remarkable. What I'm hoping for is I hope that they release a Remarkable 3 sometime that has this resolution screen, the 300 DPI. I believe it's the E-Ink Carta screen. This is an older, again, this is 5 years old. This is an older generation screen. This is only 226 DPI, and you can tell it is much more pixely. This 300 DPI in this is wonderful. So I really, really hope we get a Remarkable with a higher resolution screen. And hey, Remarkable people, if you're listening, give me links. Links would be amazing. You already win on so many other things. Links to other pages or to other notes. Way, way, way underrated feature of the Remarkable, or of the Supernote rather. I would love if you would add that. Otherwise, love this thing. Thanks for watching. Sorry I didn't have time or I guess discipline to make a more structured video, but I'm not really a YouTuber. I'm a podcaster and my podcast co-hosts aren't here. So what can I do? It was either this or nothing. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you choose to buy one of these things, I wish you the best of luck.